Shalom. Kohala Yahweh Shem Shai Bahashim Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so, now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners. And to the Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago, coming at you with another lesson. And today we're going to profile a video from the New York Post. So out the gate, claiming the Freedom of Information, UCC code of the Freedom of Information Act. This information, this is going to be used for informational and educational purposes. I do not own, do not claim to own, nor do I profit from this in any way whatsoever. All right, so without any further ado, this video is going to be titled "At the Hand of White Christians, Law Enforcement, and Officials," or something to that effect.
It was called the Red Summer of 1919, named for the blood that ran through America's cities during months of racial unrest. African-American soldiers had returned home from the Great War, World War I, to a country still teeming with discrimination. And in their quest for civil rights, tensions between blacks and whites reached a tipping point. Deadly race riots broke out in over 24 cities, but one rural town, Elaine, Arkansas, would become the epicenter for the bloodshed. The violence there, lynch mobs, torture, indiscriminate murder, was so horrific it would go down in history not as a race riot, but as the Elaine Massacre. This is history. Dark history. During World War I, more than 350,000 African American soldiers enlisted to serve. But while they fought for democracy abroad, their own country, America, was still not willing to see them as equal.
White supremacy was very mainstream at this time in the United States. Basically, a lot of African Americans were seeking to obtain their full rights and equality in the United States.
And my question to David Krugler is, what has changed? Absolutely nothing. Hence the condition of America right now with the whole George Floyd situation. And what happened? Nothing has changed.
And violence was often used by mobs of whites.
Tensions reached a boiling point in the summer of 1919.
Now you just saw the execution of this man with bricks by men in uniform. As a matter of fact, let's take that back a little bit.
Tensions.
They're bricking him, stoning him to death. All right, they have huge bricks in their hands, and I can only imagine the destruction done to his skull and his face by this uniform. Look like almost he's either a cop or he's a fireman. Okay.
Reached a boiling point in the summer of 1919. Race riots broke out in dozens of cities across the country. But in the rural South, something even more menacing was taking.
So why was that? Because the so-called Negro was afraid. Law-abiding citizens, for the most part, knew that if they even spit on the sidewalk, they could be arrested. So this Red Summer was initiated by so-called white citizens, American Christians, lawmen, and law officials that did this and allowed this to happen, and then propagated the land and the property that were owned by these blacks, all right, who so-called blacks who ran from their homes, the ones who survived it, and all their property and their land was confiscated and taken and owned by white families to this day, so-called.
Form. There, slavery existed in all but name. In a system called sharecropping, farmers provided landowners with labor for a share of crops produced. But the system was rigged. Sharecroppers were often kept in perpetual debt.
One black sharecropper raised $500 worth of cotton, and his landlord told him, yeah, but you used $697 worth of supplies, so you owe me money.
This is Isaiah 10:1. Woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees and write grievousness which they have prescribed. Nothing has changed.
Everyone who has any power at this point is working to make sure they keep African American laborers tied to the land.
For roughly 50 years, the system went unchanged.
And even though they're giving you history, the fact that they're still using the term African American and black is the proof of their hatred and their racism and their lies, because they know that these people are Israelites. They are neither African nor American. America's named for a Caucasian, a so-called white man named Amerigo Vespucci, and Africa is named after a Caucasian named Scipio Africanus, a Roman. So you're calling these brown people by the name of two white men and making it an identity. That is a social construct created here in America, an unrighteous decree.
In the fall of 1918, a black man from Arkansas had had enough. Robert Hill had decided to form a union to represent sharecroppers. It was a dangerous decision, and one that would set off a chain of events involving mass murder, torture, and a landmark Supreme Court ruling. But first, he would need to organize.
In his message, Hill was pretty simple and direct. Why is it that we cannot have fair payment for the honest and hard work we do?
Despite the inherent risk involved with challenging whites, World War I veterans and other black sharecroppers became card-carrying members of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America.
He believed that by paying dues, these members could have the services of lawyers and sue plantation owners for cotton that had been stolen from them and false numbers that had been placed in the plantation stores' books.
Now this, he meant well, but this pork-eating abomination, abominable food-eating Israelite right here has no wisdom whatsoever. Like many people of our people, this brown man that they will call black, whose physical appearance is clearly brown and not black. Look up the definition of black and see how ugly and atrocious it is, and then you will understand why they labeled you that. Can't help bring up the point that there are people on this planet, all right, who are darker than Negroes in a lot of cases. I've seen Africans. I've seen Indians and Arabs that are darker than some Africans, but yet they're not called black. Think about that. Stop and really think about that. No one's skin color is this color. He's brown. The man is brown. This is Isaiah 30:1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin unto sin. See, the scripture says, if a man's ways pleases the Lord, even his enemy will be at peace with him. But see, they weren't pleasing the Lord. They weren't calling on his name. They weren't trying to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. They were eating pork, crayfish, crawfish, crawdad, chitlins, worshiping Christmas, Halloween, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all those feast days that the Lord does not acknowledge. They didn't turn to the Lord. They turned to their oppressors to get help. And look what it got them.
On the night of September 30th, 1919, Union members gathered in Elaine to discuss their legal plan.
This is in Phillips County. It's basically just a crossroads at this time, a road, a few houses, a railroad siding, no streetlights. There's also a one-room wooden church, and that's where the union met. Expecting that they might have trouble The Union posted a guard of about 6 men. They had shotguns and rifles. The meeting's taking place. While they're having this discussion, a car rolls up the road.
2 white men were in the car.
By one account,
2 white men acting like Karen. All right? Because they had no business being there. It wasn't for them. It wasn't their situation. It wasn't their deal. But yet what? That entitlement. And many of them, the majority of them, most of them still feel this way to this day.
one of the white men in the car said, "You all get away from there." And shortly thereafter, a shot was fired.
Though it remains unclear who fired first, a barrage of gunfire broke out. One of the white men was killed almost instantly. The rumor of a black uprising spread in a matter of hours. The idea of a sharecropper rebellion conveniently played into the hands of landowners who did not want their sharecropping practices scrutinized. They did all they could, as quickly as they could, to sound alarms that black farmers were out for white blood.
The story gets magnified that the town is under attack, that
And this happened over and over
blacks
again
are killing people in the
throughout America. All right? I often bring up Elaine. You don't hear many people talk about it. I've talked about it a lot. But you had the Tulsa, Oklahoma thing. You had the Rosewood thing down in Florida, and you also had what they did right here in Chicago to the Black Belt. All right, which was one of the most prosperous neighborhoods, most prosperous, I would say, settlements of so-called Negroes, of Israelites of the Southern Kingdom in America. As great as, if not surpassed that of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they destroyed it in the same manner, right here in Chicago.
streets that there is a revolution afoot.
The sharecroppers quickly formed self-defense groups, expecting repercussions over the death of a white man. But they could not have predicted just how severe the response would be.
Right, because that hedge of protection and that evil that Esau has, that hatred he has for Jacob. This is Revelation 12:10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our power and the power of Hamashiach, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accuses them before our power day and night." See, they accuse us day and night. When you look up statistical evidence about, and this is an example I love to use, right? And I believe this was a 2016 or 17, because they removed a lot of that information when we exposed things. But there was an, it may have been from the Huffington Post, I forget exactly where, but it reported how 71% of the of white police officers that were killed in the line of duty were killed by other white men. But the news media, the daily news, would never project that, because the faces that you're seeing as criminals broadcast across the screen, for the most part daily, are so-called black and brown. Right? And when you do see when E is put on display for his wickedness, there's a distraction story that comes out within days of a so-called black or brown man that that they'll just show over and over again until the crime of the so-called white man is forgotten about or put on the back burner. This is what they do.
The following morning, under the watchful eye of Sheriff Frank Kitchens and his deputies, posses of white men were sent to find, detain, and kill the offenders.
So, the sheriff and his deputy, posses of white men. So, like I said, this was done by white Christian Americans. Christian Americans who gave no justice, only the sword. And they did it gladly.
When you have an out-of-control mob just being told there's a Negro insurrection going on, that mob's being very indiscriminate in its violence. You see houses being attacked, black-owned homes being ransacked.
The black school was burnt. Notable families were killed.
Notable families. So the families, the black families who actually were like leaders that stood out, they were killed. What was the purpose of burning up the school? What was it? Yeah, because this is just Edomite hatred and jealousy. Because these how dare these niggers try and operate independently of our system, and how dare you fight back or resist what we're doing? That's the mindset.
Women and children have to go literally hide out in the woods because many of these people are indiscriminately shooting at African American women and their children.
Black veterans and other African Americans took up arms in self-defense.
This no doubt just feeds into the mob fervor. The fact that,
White
they're daring to
power.
shoot back at us. This must really be an insurrection.
And
One
you're
historian
red,
has
you're not
identified
white.
more than
Remember that. White is a social construct as well, created in 1681 in Virginia. All right, look up the definition of white. It's pure and good and honest and all those other things. And then the definition of black is dark and gloomy, wicked.
20 different killing sites where African Americans were being killed.
There are stories that mob members were taking souvenirs, such as ears or fingers from the bodies of fallen African Americans.
One of the lead
Man, this is Zechariah 11:5, and it reads, "Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be Yahweh, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not."
leading black families of the county, they weren't even in the town. They had just received a brother back from the French front. They are pulled from a train, put in the back of a car, and they are stabbed, shot, and their mutilated bodies are left on the side of the road.
Wow.
Within 2 days, 500 U.S. troops were sent to quell the supposed black uprising.
They don't find any blacks killing or shooting down the streets. In fact, Colonel Jinks reports that the city is filled with hundreds and hundreds of white men.
So you got hundreds and hundreds of white men. So it's probably close to 1,000 armed Edomite males that are just executing. Let's not forget about it. You best believe that every female that they found got gang raped. Probably raped a few men too, because that's how Esau gets down. Right? They murdered their dogs and animals, burned down their houses. Yeah, and they violated them sexually as well. All right, this is Deuteronomy 19, and all this is done over what? Over false witness, over lie. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him, that which is wrong, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before Yahweh, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days. And the judges shall make diligent inquisition. And behold, if the witness be a false witness, and he have testified falsely against his brother, then shall ye do unto him as he thought to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put evil away from among you. So that was talking about amongst Israel, but don't forget that Esau Edom is our brother, our wicked twin brother. The accuser of they're the accuser of us. All right? There are accusers. There's no, people ignorantly look at color as an identifying mark, but you have to understand the two closest related races on the face of the earth. It's a so-called black man, Hispanic, Native American, and their counterpart is the so-called white man. All right, those are the two closest related people on the planet, man. All right, the Negroid races, which make up the 12 tribes, Latinos, natives, and so-called Negroes, and so-called Caucasians. Those are the most closely related people on the face of the earth. All right, why? Because those both came from Jacob. All right, Salakia from Isaac. Isaac's son. No, I said it right. Yeah, Isaac, because Jacob and Esau both had sons. If I'm not mistaken, Esau may have had 12 sons too. You know? But nevertheless, he had a lot of sons, regardless of how many. And that makes up the race of the so-called white man today. And of course, Jacob's sons being the 12 tribes. So let's let it play a little bit more.
Guns. Many of the individuals who were hiding in the thickets were former soldiers who had just gotten back from the war. And when they see the army troops come, they rush out, believing that the army troops are there to assist them. The army believes that these people are rushing toward them to attack, and they're cut down by machine gun fire.
No, they didn't believe that. They just did that.
Although the exact number will never be.
So their very same military brothers, so-called, exterminated them. Man, that's why it tells you in 2nd Ezra to never trust thy enemy. All right, never trust that enemy. And they trusted in their enemy, which is the problem with Jacob. All right, you keep trying to go to a system that is set up to oppress you, a system that was set up to uplift the so-called white man and to keep you Israelites down. When the laws that were established for freedom and rights and civil rights and all those things, the civil laws that were set in place were not set in place for you. And Elaine and the Red Summer is what you get when you try to implement their system to work for you. It does not. It does not. I've been in a court battle now for almost 2 years where I've proven my oppressors to be wrong and violating all the laws that they wrote. And this thing still goes on. All right? They're in violation of their old laws. They don't care. They don't care. It's not for us. All right? It's not for us. 2 last scriptures. This is Galatians 6 and 7. Because what happens in this video after this is that a bunch of men get put on trial, mistreated, and tortured. All right? And a lot of people destroy their houses, their homes are taken away. And that just goes to show you that the lawyers, the judges, the police, the military, the citizens, all divided up the spoils of these so-called black victims. It's this one that's lying on the ground, beaten and bloody and dead and broken. All right, looks like one of his legs is missing too. They were taking trophies, so he said ears and fingers. They would tell, believe me, when they were hanging Jake, that's why you always see their pants down, because they would cut their penises off too and put them in jars and pickle them. Why? Who? That just the men of wickedness of this man. But this is Galatians 6 and 7, man, and it reads. Oh, I mean 4. And it reads, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that also shall he reap." So this is going to be done unto Esau, Edom, man, women, and children, double, according to Revelation 18 and 6. Double. One last scripture, man, because you think that there isn't going to be a payment for this, you out of your damn mind. All right? And they always say, oh, that's old. What happened yesterday shapes today. All right? What happened yesterday shaped today. And the Lord said he requires that which is past. That's in Ecclesiastes. But this is Ezekiel 25 and 12. "Thus saith Yahweh power, because that Edom have dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and have greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Therefore thus saith Yahweh power, I will also stretch out my hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and will make it desolate. From Teman to Dedan shall fall, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword." So all of Edomites are going to fall by the sword. The Lord is going to ensure it. Verse 14. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. And they shall do in Edom according to my anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith Yahweh power. So the Lord is going to, in the not so distant future, unleash angry Latinos, natives, and Negroes, so-called, on Edom. Not only in Babylon, but worldwide. And they're going to do unto them what was done unto them, double, and with the fury of the Lord in them. Call Halal Yahweh Bashan Shai by Hashem Wakakwadash Wa Abba Babal Shalom.